Yes. All right. Take it away.
Okay, so this video um is going to be me and Kyle trying to go over a lot of the discussion questions that um, he has posed to us in the Bible questions Discord chat. Um, I've gotten a lot out of reading these and thinking about these, and it's something I've wanted to engage with more people with. Though I've gotten some of the notes that it's hard to actually sift through and parse through and read all of the questions and answers because it's kind of all back and forth and all over the place.
Yeah, I
So what?
thought about maybe I need to make it like a forum thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's a workable system right now for actively using it, but it's hard for going back into the history of it and going through and reading it. So what we're gonna try and do here, as well as just going over the questions, I kind of want some insights into where your headspace was in writing them. Um, and we're going to try and go through all of them, whether that's in just one video or a couple of videos, and answer these three questions for each of them. So, question one would be when you wrote this, what kind of responses were you expecting? Um, Question two will be what is your answer to this discussion question? And three are what are your thoughts on the answers slash discussion that this question received? Um, Now, for answers that are my responses, I'll also fill in like more fully what my takes were. Um, cut, cut there. Ah, hey, Maisie.
all right, keep going.
Yeah. So for the responses to the discussion questions that were my answers, I can kind of fill in my takes
Sure.
and my thought process, and we can have a back and forth on that. For responses that are other people's, um, I can't necessarily speak on their behalf,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
we have what answers they have, and we can kind of take the thoughts from there, or I can say my piece of what I thought of it too when we go through it. Um, so, with that said, I think we're good to go for covering the first discussion question, unless we have anything else to
No, 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 no.
add before that. Okay, so discussion question number one. What does it mean for the sun and the moon to rule the firmament? How is that related to other instances of ruling? So, the first part of this question is when you wrote this, what kind of responses were you expecting?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's obvious that the main kind of ruling that people think about whenever they think about Genesis 1 is um or not even necessarily Genesis 1, but like the early chapters of Genesis is the relationship of like the man kind of ruling over the woman. And uh I thought I would get more references to that. And
Mm,
I don't think anyone talked about it. So
fair.
so that's what I was like expecting, and I was hoping I was trying to see and to specify because I don't think you said it. But um, my intention with these like I don't have set answers for a lot of these. Like the whole reason why I'm asking them, this isn't like
That's
the
what I
dis-
assumed.
yeah
Just so
the
you know,
discussion
I
questions
assumed
are
that.
not supposed to be like Sunday school questions of
No.
me being like, did you pay attention? Like that's not what it is. It's these are areas that I have trouble with, or that I find difficult, or that I don't have a set answer for. And so that to me is the area where discussion should happen.
Yeah. I
Um,
didn't expect you to have a set answer, but I just assumed that you
sure.
have some take on all of these that you were
Yes.
going to have. So that's why I was just like, we should give that um,
Yeah.
some airtime too. The other thing I wanted to mention is it makes sense that you brought that up. I wanted to say that the thing that probably colors a lot of your new thoughts on this the most, obviously, was having children. I think you kind of said that
Yeah.
at some points.
Yes.
Um, And then for me, the stuff that's affected the way I'm bringing a lot of my thoughts into this was just reading through the language of creation.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where a lot of my takes are coming from. Um, I understand a lot of like the insights you're getting are kind of inspired by having kids and then followed up by like research from there. If I'm
Yeah. I
understanding
mean,
that kind of right.
both of those things. Um,
Yeah.
but because I mean, those things like kind of go together in a lot of ways. I guess I'll just say my kind of why I kind of made this like the first question was because um like okay, so like in the news recently, I
Mm.
don't know if you saw this, but like I think like a woman got appointed to be the head of the Church of England.
Oh, I didn't see
And
this actually.
yeah,
Okay.
and so like whenever like that announcement happened, I think it was her or some like publicist or whatever, they put out a thing that was like Jesus is against hierarchies. And
Whoa.
yeah, right?
Whoa.
And like that's like a common kind of like progressive like talking point. And it was one of the things where I was like, okay, so like even like egalitarians, like if you go watch like Mike Winger's like 12-hour monolith on egalitarian versus complementary like thought and everything, um, there'll be a lot of like people trying to be like, oh, let's nuance what such and such means and how we
Mm.
can do all of that. And part of what I was trying to like get at with like this question is like, yeah, sure, like you can do that with pretty much all of the passages that are about like men and women like throughout the text. But like this one, no one out here is trying to nuance why does the sun rule the sky? Like
Yeah.
that's just like
Mhm.
boom, it is. Like
Mhm.
you gloss over it. You take it for granted. Um and it's like no, they're like why is that? What does that mean? That right? And like because obviously that should like and we talked about this like a little bit in the in the Bible study itself because like obviously um like there's a lot of debate about like how like the Egyptians and other like pagan cultures like thought about like the sun and whether or not it was alive and all of
Mhm.
that stuff. And like and people try to emphasize that it's like okay, that creation is not um that like these things are created, that these aren't like other gods or something like that. But also like this relationship between like agency and matter and all that stuff, which
We're gonna get into
you brought
more
up
of. Yeah.
in that. But for me, sort of my answer of how I was just thinking about it wasn't necessarily like a solid point on any of that, but was more that very clearly in the natural order, like God thinks that natural hierarchies are good,
Mhm.
and like natural hierarchies serve a function, and like that needs to be remembered whenever you get to especially the stuff that we're talking about in Genesis, but even like today whenever we were talking like because for what Pastor Tim talked about at church today with the story of Christmas, of like okay, Jesus is born like outside in the city and like goes to the shepherds, which is like the low point of the hierarchy, um, and he's born in a manger, right?
Hmm.
And so like the manger is the thing, and I keep I need to do like an etymology study, but like does is manger a French word? It,
Manger is French for to eat.
yeah,
It's
yeah, manger,
manger.
manger,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
it's like, well, right, exactly. So it's like, okay, so like the thing is that the thing that Jesus comes to be is to be food, right?
Hmm.
Right. So like, it's not just that he's born in a dirty place. Like he comes to be the bottom of the hierarchy. He comes to be the
Yeah.
bottom. He comes to be the bottom of the food chain, right? And we,
Yes.
we think about like the food pyramid thing, like that, like that it like it's the highest becoming the lowest. It's not just that he's born in the lowest place. It's that
Right.
like he is that, like, and so like he is like the bread of life,
Hmm.
and and all
Very
that stuff.
literally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like very yeah, um, and so like very clearly like why is he doing that? And like I think a modern take is like, well, he's doing that because he's subverting the power structures to
Mm.
like destroy them. And I think the thing that you should be getting out of Genesis is like, no, he set those up.
Yeah.
Like those power structures predate, like they predate the Tower of Babel, right? Like that should be the thing that like that we pay attention to. Like, and so though if those hierarchies are there ahead of time, like those hierarchies are supposed to be serving something, and right, and so like does like when the and so this is the area that like I'm still like working on, is like they do the sun and moon and their functions as rulers, like like how, like if a ruler is supposed to serve, how are the sun how's the sun and how are the sun and moon serving the rest of the celestial bodies?
Mm.
And I don't really know.
Yeah.
Right, but like that's sort of where I'm at with it, and that's sort of and that's one area that like like my goal with that question was to kind of try and get people to think about hierarchies.
Yeah. That's in, the hierarchy point is interesting. I'll go off that for just a second because the I believe at the time we're recording this, the most recent universal history video from Jonathan Pajot and Richard Rowland is talking about like the American religion.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um,
I don't know if I've
and
seen the most up to date episode, but I have seen some of them. Yeah.
but in essentially when he's talking about the American religion, what he's getting at is saying that there's a belief that hierarchy is relevant and that we only need God and ourselves.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so it's very funny that he's saying like that's like the quintessential American religion. And then because of
Yes.
that, I think some of the people they bring up reference Mormonism a lot more
Yes.
than even actual Christianity. So it's very interesting that the head of the English church is taking that point because that would
Yes.
like let's abolish hierarchy because that's
Yes.
literally
Which is also funny to me, just on
what
their
they
point, because like Mormons have much more of a hierarchical structure than like regular
right.
Protestants do. Like they
Yes.
literally have like secret meetings and stuff that you have to do.
I, I,
Like
I,
the
I take
highest.
umbrage a
Yeah.
little bit with
Yeah.
the take of saying like, oh, the ideal American religion would be Mormonism. I've
Yeah.
hazard to guess that they
There's
probably just don't
there's a
know
various
much
number of
about
things that
Mormonism.
I'm like, they're not quite right in that episode, but that's not what this is about. But yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that got me thinking about that. The little irony that that's the head of the English church. Is it the Anglican or is it just English?
Anglican, yeah, yeah. Anglican and Episcopalian are the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so like Anglican is so like the Anglicans are called Episcopalians in America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Um,
See, you're just spinning.
the other
Oh,
point I wanted to say is you were mentioning the idea of ruling, but and tying it to like servitude, which Jesus very much does. Um, however, what I was getting at is I think Jesus comes in to show the perfect model of like servant leadership, and that maybe the concept is slightly disconnected from just the concept of leadership. Um, Hence why, like,
Yeah,
prior to Jesus, there is a lot of that disconnect.
yeah.
And so I think there's a potential that perhaps the sun and the moon are leading, but maybe they're not servant leaders.
Well, right, exactly, because that's sort of like because your answer was like they're the biggest, right?
Right,
And
which
my kind
we'll
of
go ahead and
response is like, if that's all it is, I feel like there's something that feels kind of intuitively wrong about that answer that like because because that is an idea that the Bible subverts, right? Like that just
mhm,
that the biggest person
right,
rules, right? That's literally the David and Goliath story, right?
yes,
And so that feels like that shouldn't be the answer. Um, but it it's at the same time both the first intuitive answer of why they rule, but is also
I think that's what it is. I think
yeah,
it's the something like something like power kind of helps to establish the reason for dominion or leadership, but it
yes.
doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way that you should be a leader.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
the it's not the it's not the best way, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, because necessarily part of the founding of the reason why we follow after God is because He had the power to create
Yeah.
the universe. I mean, that's part and parcel of it. It's what a lot of people cite, especially like in the Old Testament, of reasons why you should worship this God is because this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
power of him.
Because
But then
yeah, he's made it more. Yeah, yeah,
in the
that's
actual
true.
acts of leading, um, it is more servant leadership. So perhaps the grounds for being leader could be as simple as saying, okay, I have the capabilities of being leader, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to fully embrace a leadership style that like is fundamentally based on exhibiting those powerful capabilities. So we'll get into what my answer was um, to question one, uh, mostly just because it was the only answer that we really got at the beginning. So it was this: uh, they are the chief, largest objects in the sky during their respective domains. The sun during the day, obviously, and the moon at night. Um, God also gives dominion to man over the beasts of the land, sea, and sky. Ultimately, God also has dominion over all of creation. Um, yeah, so what I was making there was a point pointing to hierarchy, right? Um, and that we're seeing in the sun and moon getting hierarchies is a sort of nested hierarchy, um, in which God is still at the pinnacle of that hierarchy, but then at the level of this is a domain that we don't have control over, especially at the time of the writing of this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, we're getting to the point where we almost do with like Space Force
yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot, but even that's got a hierarchy to it,
Moon base.
moon base and everything like
Yeah.
that. Um, but it's in that sense is a call to for us to remember that we're not we're not necessarily sovereign over the entire universe. There are things that are beyond us, and but that doesn't mean that things kind of spiral out into the void immediately. There's still kind of an order um, that's been set up and is recognizable um, to us.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, we wouldn't attend the same to like a random star the same way we do to the sun. The sun obviously has a much bigger impact on our lives than like Sirius or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Even though there's hierarchies among stars too, because the North Star is obviously much more important than I don't know some random star in Orion's belt or something like that. Um, so and they have different purposes. So you can you can see these hierarchies are nested at different levels, and we need to recognize that some of those levels are above us. In this case, quite literally. Um,
Yeah, and well, yeah, I didn't think about so much about like the connections of that with like how how are the other stars used? And it's like the other stars are mainly used for like navigation and like finding
mhm.
stuff, but we you know, and then that is an interesting thought process of we are approaching, you know, the point of being a civilization that might be able to bring about a different type of dominion to these stars, and that
Hmm.
we can go out and, collect them for resources,
Right.
right? And like, is that it, you know it, is that our kingdom is now clashing with the kingdom of the sun, right? um yeah, there's something. Yeah, I don't have anything there, but there's something there.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will move on to discussion question 2,
Sure.
um, which is what is the relationship between Yam as timekeeping method and Yam as light, since the first instance of it is actually as the name of light. God called the light day. So, what kind of responses were you expecting when you wrote this?
I'm not sure. Um, like, obviously, like with most, um, I don't think I really anybody responded to this one, right?
That's the spoiler on this one. No one responded to this question.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
This is one of the few that has no responses.
Yeah. Because like obvious, because like to me, like for I mean, I don't know if because like there's an age gap between us.
Mm-hmm.
But for pretty much all of my life, the whole like, what does Yam mean here is
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know. People act like it's the biggest like biblical theological discussion slash debate that there is.
Mm-hmm.
And like to the point of like, like I became like a Christian whenever I was 10, and like I didn't really feel like I kind of had it like fully solved until, or at least my opinion on it, until like 19, 20 or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And my opinions on all of this have fluctuated throughout time. um but it's it, it it's had the whole thing about like what does Yam mean has had this outsized um impact on Christian discussions for my entire life. And it was funny to me that I was like, okay, well, actually, the first time that the word shows up, it's in relationship to light. And people are always like, well, Yam means 24 hours. Like that's what it means. It means 24 hours. It's like, well, very clearly, right there, it doesn't mean 24 hours. Like
Right.
24 hours doesn't mean like we called the
Mm-hmm.
light 24 hours. Like no, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? And it's another one of those, like, this is what kind of most of my questions sort of like, if there's one kind of common thing, it's me trying to look at like, okay, what are the things that people like gloss over and kind of don't
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to, because that seemed like I've been a Christian and been doing Bible studies long enough to know that there are a lot of things that people will read the verse and think, and like literally won't give it a second thought and just move right along and start arguing about
Oh yeah.
other stuff. And part of the other reason why I asked this question was because there's a big online debate going on right now about a different word, and that word is Israel. And like, what does Israel mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, so you can go to the politics thing and see people
Yep.
arguing about that, and like that's sort of what I'm trying to like, not necessarily get people to talk about, but like to like think about of like, okay, if we do this thing where we say this is the definition and it always means that, well then as soon as you get to a place where like it very clearly doesn't mean that, it's like your rule just broke. The rule that
Yeah.
you made up for what your hermeneutics is about how to do this, right? And so like the one for Israel is, the Israel is always the covenant people of God. No,
Except for
no,
when like it
no.
at first literally isn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um.
First, literally is not. Second, like, how do you deal with all of the passages where it's like Israel has abandoned me? So
Mm-hmm.
like Israel is. whoring after the other nations. Like, oh, okay, so no, Israel isn't that. And so if that's the case, like it's a sort of a similar thing, but like that I'm doing here. It's like, okay, we like
Mhm.
we don't even need to go like my thing used to always be to like look at day 7, like look at day 7, look at how it uses the word day. um Look at how it uses the word day whenever it says like in the day that you eat this, you will surely die. Like it used to be
Mhm.
always those would be like the things that I would kind of go to be like, okay, this whole Yom definitely means 24-hour thing is like ridiculous. But I was like, oh, it's actually sooner than that. It's
Mhm.
immediate, where it's
Yeah.
not even a timekeeping device. It's the name of light, and so like that's sort of where I was going
Okay.
with
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. That's actually largely context that I actually didn't grasp from the asking of the question. And
Yes.
if I didn't, I imagine most people didn't, and that's probably why we didn't interact with that question as much.
Sure, sure, and
But
that
that's very interesting. I'm glad
that
we
wasn't
covered that.
like I wasn't like yeah. I mean, I definitely have hidden motivations behind asking some of the questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was sort of where I was like, why I
Just
thought
kind
the
of put.
question was important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just kind of
Um.
like poking at trying to say like, okay, people are going to, when approaching Genesis and when approaching the whole Bible, really, but they're gonna have their pre-established notions from whatever they decided to believe or whatever they first heard
Or
or
whatever,
whatever.
whatever they happen to hear.
Right.
Yes.
Um, and just kind of pushing at some of the things that you may take for granted
Yes.
as a rock bed whenever we're studying something that, I mean, like the Bible is true across time, but the medium in which that we're actually trying to engage with it has it's very experiential and cultural, so it's going to be
Yeah.
hard to lock in on any of these um, terms or what things mean, um, and that we can't just make assumptions about some things and then take our assumptions as more like foolproof. Um, So that's all very interesting to that, which is, like I said, context that I didn't quite get from the question. So I'm glad we're doing this. So, like I said, no responses. So we're gonna move on.
Yeah. 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 That's fine.
Uh, Discussion question 3. God names 5 things in Genesis 1: the light, the darkness, the firmament, the dry land, and the gathered waters. The next entity to name anything is Adam in Genesis 2. Who named Adam? So, when you wrote this, what kind of responses were you expecting?
Yeah, again, this was at the like a lot of these are at the beginning of me trying to just generate conversation. So I didn't really know. Um, yeah, I didn't really know. Um, I thought there would be some kind of connection made. Um, I thought there would be some kind of connection made with like kind of like the literary theory. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think anyone went down that rabbit hole. But I'm also trying to emphasize the word called there. So like that's like in the picture, right? I believe that's what I did. Is that what I did? Yeah, I highlighted the word called, and I'm also trying to highlight the fact that um right, like who named Adam, that it never says that God called him Adam. Like that doesn't happen. And I was sort of hoping that there would be a discussion about like explicit naming versus implicit naming, and
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean in relationship to creation.
Right.
um and kind of trying to reference what's his face, Walton's um functional view,
Mm.
um which is sort of where the discussion ended up going
I mean,
ultimately.
we had this kind of discussion, but it
Yes.
was on a different question later, I
Oh, did
think.
we? Oh, okay.
Because well, that kind of the naming kind of questions comes up a lot more on a future one. We got into this a little bit
Yes.
here on this one, and so that'll come up again. So we won't focus too much on it here necessarily, but we'll go ahead and I'll just ask then. So, what is your answer to this question?
Um, I don't think that Adam is named. Um,
Mm.
I think that I think that um I think that um because I think I ended up saying this in one of the answers, but I didn't go back through all of these answers, so I don't
Right.
really necessarily remember all these things. But there's one of my things is that I don't think I've talked about much yet in the Bible study, but we're going to get to it next week, is because we're at Genesis 6 now, which is where this comes up. But the fact that uh, names are linked with power. Um, and this is this is an idea that's like obvious in our culture. You know, it's like the Rumpelstiltskin story and and all this
Right.
stuff, right? Um, but the thing that I've gotten out of it, and it's one of the things that because I made a reference to like trans ideology, right?
Yes.
And part of the thing with the whole trans ideology is that um, people are just asserting like such and such is my name,
Right.
right? And part of how that works is it is a power game. Like
Yes.
it's a way to be like, can I bully you into making you call me this name that it's not my birth name, right?
Which is why it extends into the pronoun aspect of it
Yes,
too. It's the same.
exactly. Like
It's the same power game.
it goes with that. And like we see this as a new thing. And part of what I'm trying to get people to understand is that like, that's not really a new thing. Like it's it's like it can be like it can be even connected with like call me king, right?
Right.
And like it's like, okay, well, like, why are you calling me king? You're calling me king because if you don't call me king, you're gonna get a sword to the throat,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Hey, hey. um but like a more interesting example of that to me, in my opinion, is like Caesar, right?
Right.
Because it's like
I was thinking of Alexander the Great when you said like a name. It's like, okay, who threw the great on there? You know.
exactly. But like Caesar, right? Because like Caesar is a name, but at a certain point, Caesar is a title, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so, but like, and there's all this debate about like who's the proper Caesar, right? Especially whenever you get like later down the line, and it's like who's the I don't know who jumped
Oh,
on.
we got Miles joining us.
Oh, hi
Yeah.
Miles.
That's my.
What are
What's
you
up,
guys doing?
Miles?
I didn't know there was
We're
class today.
We're recording a video.
yeah, we're recording a podcast about the discussion questions.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's
Should
all
have made it
good.
private.
No problem.
I mean,
Fair
we
enough. I
we
guess
we
we didn't
didn't
think
know
about
that
that.
other people actually come on
Yeah, if I have time, I would. But
here.
I
Oh,
can leave. Sorry.
I mean,
Apologies.
No problem. See you, Miles.
yeah, see ya.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but yeah, so like the um the idea that like people started being like, okay, like with an actual name being like, I'm gonna force you to call me this name, and that like that became like the basis for all of these different like dynasties and everything, and like and how that even relates to like this idea that we haven't really talked about much, but like that I kind of go off on of like that maybe the Roman Empire never actually ended,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
um like we assign a date to whenever the Roman Empire ended, but like all the way through up until the modern era, people were still claiming like to be descendant in some way of like of that, whether that be like Charlemagne
Yeah,
you know,
the Holy Roman
the Holy
Empire. I mean,
Roman
the whole
Empire.
thing. Yeah.
I mean, like the czars in Russia,
Hmm.
the in some respects, like the Third Reich, right? And then even like
Yeah.
further of like the idea of like an eagle being your standard, right? And like because
Hmm.
like that's the way that the Roman military worked, and like the U.S. Army does that as well, right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
we give our like people like like we give them an eagle, right? And like they
Yeah.
kind of have that thing too, and so it's like, oh, okay, did it never really go away, and we're all just still vying for who's Caesar, right? And especially whenever like you get into the time frame that we're in right now of people being like, Baron Trump is going to be like Octavian is going to become like Augustus, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and so like, um, I think all of that is like there's a lot to be explored there with how naming works.
Yeah.
And I don't have like a full complete answer on that. But yeah, I guess that is my answer directly to the question of who named Adam is I don't think Adam and I think there is something to say about like that means something that Adam isn't named by God. He Adam is named through creation, right? And
Right. Which we
um
can both, and I'll say this as an aside, because again we'll get to it later, but we can both agree that we disagree with Ryan's take. Well, his initial
yes.
take at this, which was saying that a description is not a name, by which you could essentially say, literally, Adam is not named. He is just
Yeah.
he's just man,
He
which is just
he's
description
the
of
man.
he's just
He's hot Adam.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, he's the man here. Um, and in which case, yeah, he literally never is named. So the question of who named him would be like no one, obviously, because
Right.
he doesn't receive a name. But I think we both of us kind of disagree with that because we both would say that yes, the name Adam is actually his name. Um,
For our purposes of what we need, yeah, for like the
yes,
story, yes.
yes.
And and but and
Oh,
this
I see what you mean. Yeah, not in the sense of like, okay, if we get into like a historical
yeah, the
Adam,
whole
that we're gonna
yes,
actually
exactly.
find like a guy named Adam. But I
Yes.
mean like Adam in the story, like that's his name.
Yes.
Um, that's not just a description. That is
No.
actually like a name.
Right.
Um,
And also I would say that like um it goes to kind of my broader point that I was trying to make of that cre like creating and naming are sort of i if you agree with the broader point that creating and naming are kind of the same thing, then I'm willing to grant that God names Adam, right? Because like God makes
oh,
Adam,
okay, yeah.
right? And it's like
Uh-huh.
if creating and naming are like if you grant me that point, which is a point that I think Ryan would not grant me, and that's what a lot of our arguments ended up
I think I
being.
also don't grant you this point, but
Yeah, I think you also
go on.
don't, but I do. I like to me that's the argument that, like that you have to make. You have to make the argument that creating and naming are kind of like they kind of go both ways. And so if they go both ways, um, then you can have that Adam is um, uh, named by God. But then
Mhm.
you end up having a problem, right? Which is where if I'm going to give credit to you, right? You then have a problem in Adam naming the animals because
Yes.
then it becomes, oh, is Adam creating the animals? And my argument would be kind of
Hmm.
actually. This is this and like my argument that kind of my broader argument that I want to make is that like I kind of think that Adam makes the serpent. um, I and there's something. I think that there's something there whenever and like so like the broader thing that I'm kind of trying to say is something like I think that there's something related there to like the creation of free will, right? Like in the creation of free will, and in like the very act of creating a being with free will, you create both. Like it necessarily follows that you create the agent, which would be Adam, and you create um the opposite of the correct choice, right? Which God's the correct choice, and Satan is the incorrect choice. The serpent is the incorrect choice, and so like yes, like God makes Satan. Like everybody's going to agree on that. Like
Yeah.
we're all on board
Mhm.
with that. But what I'm trying to say is like there's an implicit creation that's linked with the creation of Adam, um, that I think can be seen in the idea of him naming the animals. In that, um, in the same way that there's like an unspoken creation of Adam, I think that there's an unspoken creation of the serpent, and
Mhm.
that's sort of the broader point that I was that that's my like take on it.
Okay, I'll accept that that's your take. Because I obviously can't change the nature of what is or isn't your take. Um, but I'll go ahead and get into where my difference of opinion is on
Sure.
this now, and say that I would say that um, this question kind of separates the idea in my gut reaction of refusing the idea that something that naming is inherently linked to creation, um, necessarily because we are very much in the process of discovering and naming still, um, uh, which in one sense I can see what if you're arguing that like if we haven't discovered it, like does it even exist? um, However, I think we can safely say that yes, it does exist, but it exists unnamed is what I'm getting at.
Well,
So I would
depending on what
actually
you're discovering, and it depends on what you're talking about. Like if you're talking about like mathematics or something like that, and you're discovering a new theorem, I'm like all for you. I'm all with you in that like
I'm saying like it.
mathematics is not invented, mathematics is discovered,
Well,
right?
also new species of animals. I would say that as well. Like
Sure, something like that.
if it's like an undiscovered animal, and not as in like a branch animal or whatever, but like an
But
actual new discovery of some creature or whatever.
like Harry Potter, right? Like
Hmm.
named and created, right?
Well,
And
they're often linked, but I think that's and I'll get into why. My point here is I think largely it's an agency question, and I think it's a bit of I would view that God in giving Adam the responsibility or the domain or the the rule of naming the animals is also saying okay everything within your domain is yours to name, um, essentially. Um, I mean, I think we see that on a very small scale by the fact that we get to name like our own kids, right?
mm,
Like they're mine. I
yeah,
get to
yeah, yeah.
name them. That's the control I have. But us on the like civilization level, we decide the names. Um, Much like how, when Adam in the story
So
names the animals, we presumably don't call them the same things
so
that
the
Adam would have done named. Um, like he wasn't naming them in English.
so
Which is
I'm gonna
what
throw
getting
a
at there.
couple of screws in your thing. Just um so like
I'll allow you, but my point's not finished.
oh okay, sorry. Um like one of the things that like right so it's like that you said of like naming the things that's like underneath you. That like one of the things that we do a lot as like a modernist society, modernist scientific society, is we name everything. And,
Yes.
and especially even just like as Americans, like I was just even having a conversation like this past week with my coworker who she's from India, and she's talking about how like Americans have a name for like everything,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a difference between a house, a home, and an apartment, and a flat, and like all of the like we in a loft, like we have all of these different things, and like by having in condos and by having all of these different names of things, it affords us power to interact with all of those things differently, right?
Yes.
and and so that's one aspect of it. The and so like in that sense I'm like, okay, are we creating different things by the fact that we name these different things, even
Mm-hmm.
though like in some other society they might like function with them in similar ways. um the other thing would be like, I don't know if you've heard about this whole thing about how like different languages having multiple words for like the same color. So like I think it's like in Russian, there's like 4 or 5 different words for blue, and like and there's like a connection between the fact that like you can show like if you show all of those different shades to like an American, they'll just go, "Oh, that's blue," and
It's all
they
blue.
can't really. But furthermore, like a lot of times they'll actually not be able to tell the
Like
difference
perceive the
between them.
differences. Yeah.
They won't be able to tell whenever it changes between one or the other. Whereas like a Russian, whenever they look at it, they're like, "Oh yeah, I have a category for that. I have a category for this," and they can tell whenever it changes between the two different categories. And so like in some ways there is the creation of something whenever you have that additional name for it. And that's those are
So
my
my response to
screws.
that is that that practice, especially in the two examples you cited, which was varying names for blue or like shades of blue, and then variations on um, housing,
Sure.
is that essentially you have a name for it, um, but what you're creating when you provide a new name to differentiate it from a different thing is you are creating a new nested category.
Yes.
Um,
Subcategories. I I,
and
I
so,
I would categorize what I'm talking about as a form of subcreation. Yes.
which I would argue that that's either subcreation or that's like a dissection, which is slightly different from creation because you're
Mm,
taking a whole and you're slicing off a piece of it and saying, okay, this is that section, and that allows me to just interact with that section. So that is like a heightening of the power of the name because now um, I don't even have to. I have a concept. I don't even have to mess with the other things that nested in that concept. I just mess with this bit, saying like I'm only gonna have a tax on bungalows. Like
sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm only gonna use this shade of blue uh, in all of my advertising, that sort of thing. Um, and so I would say largely those are forms of like dissection of okay, you have a broader category and we're narrowing it down versus the naming of something um, undiscovered is like referring to like a whole category. And so I would say more like, or not whole category, or not a subcategory, but a whole category. So the whole thing of um, tiger, let's say, um, is going to like that, that would have. I suppose what we'd be getting at is necessarily they're all subcategories of animal, and so the first thing is animal.
Right.
Um,
And I think you're starting to you're starting to like, and so this is sort of my point. My point is that like my kind of broader point, and this is where I sort of went with Ryan, is that and Rock World, and that there are names in Rock World of any sort of differentiation, in my estimation, is a form of naming. Like the second you bring about any form of like that thing is different than that thing, like there's a naming process going on. It might not be fully articulated or whatever, but like the naming process has begun. And like this is my thing of like the that of why I kind of think that's important. Hey, I'm gonna pause things real quick. You'll take over.
Okay.
Go for it.
So the but the one part I wanted to get back to on
Yes.
this is what I said at the top of my response was this is kind of a difference in agency. So I would say that we were afforded the ability and freedom and choice to name the creatures and the things in which we discover in our domain. I would then say that it's an expression of God's agency to then name us. And the reason why I'm stating this is because I still do think there is a separation between the idea of creation and naming. And saying that what you're seeing, the phenomenon that you're seeing there would be that when God created us, there was already that kind of mixed nature of the naming and creating. But he allowed us the opportunity to take a lot of the things that we see in the material world and then apply the process of naming onto that at our discretion. Hence why, the creation and naming would be separate because the physical thing exists. Like a child can have a name, a child can be alive and have no name for a long time, I guess. But then it's within our ability to then, or at our discretion to then name the child. Which is the reason why I then stress that the relevance of names is more so dependent on an observer that can grasp the name and can.
And I agree with you on this point, and this is sort of what I'm trying to talk about the differentiation
Right.
about because like an observer is like the existence of an observer is differentiation.
Yeah.
Right.
Necessarily, yes. And which is part of the reason why I stated before that in the scenario of God in a world made entirely of rocks, there is no differentiation. That's just like an extension of himself necessarily until you have like an outer like outerversal observer like one of us walked up to on like some other kind of plane to it and is like, what's that part of you, because it's different from like whatever entity or glory you are, and then he would be like, well, I didn't have to have a name for it until you were around.
See, and that's where I'm not. See, you think you need an additional observer beyond God, and I think that
Yeah.
God is a sufficient observer for the creation of the name.
Well, because part of the power that I think you see in naming is that it eliminates the ambiguity or confusion of existence,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
my name is Evan, your name is Kyle.
Mhm.
When someone wants to be talking to me, they say, "Hey, Evan." When someone wants to be talking to you, they say, "Hey, Kyle."
Mhm.
And so we do this with the names of categories too. When I want to go get steak, like,
Yeah.
let's go to a place that serves steak. If you want to get chicken, we'll do that. So the point of the name is to eliminate the ambiguity that we find ourselves in a material world. It's a labeling process by which we can understand things more precisely. My point of why I'd say that that process isn't necessary with God is because he has perfect or perfect knowledge, like inherently as one of his core attributes. In which case, there is no ambiguity to begin with. Anything that he creates, he'll have a perfect understanding of beyond what the capabilities of a name would be able to afford him. Like differentiations down to the
So I think what this is,
quantum level.
I think what this is that you think that names have a contingent reality to them.
Yeah.
And I think that names have a logically there's a logical necessity
Yeah.
to names.
Right.
And like I'll agree with you. I agree with your overall point about ambiguity and the function of it, like all of that. I agree with that. It's that point of that, okay, well, God doesn't have the ambiguity, therefore he doesn't need the name, therefore the name doesn't exist. And I think that's a little bit like saying, to me, that's a little bit in the realm of God can make a married bachelor. And to where I'm like, I just think that it logically follows that if there's something that is not him and he knows about it, it has a name. And since he knows about everything, that like like
And so I guess we're just gonna, because this is an entirely theoretical
yeah,
space.
yeah.
Like we can't prove this, but I would settle on that it necessarily can be named by what you've just laid out. Like if it exists at some kind of differentiation from him, it doesn't necessarily have a name, but it can be named.
But
And if we were to try and make sense of it, we would need a name.
But I do want to throw one other thing at you with this, mostly just because it was a thing that I was thinking about a lot of whenever we were having all of these discussions, and I never said it. But it relates to the whole having kids thing. Is that in my opinion, we're going through right now a very interesting process with Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, Sophia knows Mama. Sophia knows Dada.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia knows Maisie.
Mm-hmm.
And she can say all of those things. And she will respond to Sophia. Like, if you say, hey, Sophia, and she'll look
Mm-hmm.
at you. And you say, come here, and she'll come over. But if you try to get her to say Sophia, you say, like, can you say Sophia? She just stares at you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even done it where I'm like, let's break this up. Like, so. She'll be like, so. And I'm like, Fia. And she's like, Fia. And I'm like, Sophia. Blank. I'm just like, this is the Patrick Star meme. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I don't understand why I can't get you to like say your name. And to me, there's a little bit like it feels like we are kind of going through a process of like she has a name, but we're going through a process of naming her, right?
Mm.
Like at this moment, there might not be like I don't think she has like I have a self identity of like I'm Kyle, like
Right.
my name's Kyle. I don't think Sophia has that yet, and she
Yeah.
definitely didn't have that, like
No.
like
And I would agree with you. I don't think
right?
she does have that yet.
And but she's in the process of making like the self identification of Sophia. And if you go off on my like tripartite understanding of a human being as being soul, spirit, and body. Um, and I don't know if you've ever listened to like Inspiring Philosophy's definition. If you've ever watched he has a video on what he thinks a soul is and what he defines a soul as. And
Hmm.
basically, he thinks souls are things that um, are created, and that life is like a soul creation process, and that like your soul develops. And I remember watching that video, and I'm like, in my opinion, you're so close because that's just what I think a spirit is.
Mm.
Like I think that the spirit, like your mind, like your self identification, self conscious, active mind, the one that's thinking right now, like that's your spirit. And I think what's going on with Sophia in this naming process is the creation of her spirit, right? Like I think she already has a soul, right?
Right.
And and but I think that the that like as the immaterial starts to have like a relationship with your brain, there's a creation of the active mind. There's a creation of this spirit, and I think that your spirit kind of grows. Um, and I think that's going on with her, and this is sort of my thing of like our act of naming her, I think is participating in the creation of that spirit.
Mm.
And I can't figure out a better way of describing what I think is going on there
Right.
than that. And that's sort of one of my like other like I wanted to say that because that's sort of my other real world example of like, okay, I think like naming is a type of creating. And like obviously I'm not making her, obviously I'm not making her
Hmm.
soul, right? Like
Right.
that's not happening. And I'm not making the I'm not making the immaterial part of whoever it is that she is. But like we kind of are making her spirit. And like and especially if like right like we have this idea of like your spirit can be sad and your spirit can be happy and your spirit
Yeah.
can have all of these like you can have spiritual damage, right? Like that you grow up with, right? And most of that comes from your parents,
Right.
right? And so like I'm potentially making spiritual baggage right now. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what am I doing that to?
Right.
Right? It's like I'm
It's
doing that to something, right?
yeah. What you're bringing to mind for me, at least in the when talking about spirits, is another um, what I say, Pajot, or insight I gained from Pajot. Um, whether it's not like a him thing because he's going to refer to a church father somewhere.
Sure. We don't know which one that is.
It's not a. It's fine. um, but referring to the concept of saying, okay, like every conversation has an
Yes.
angel or
Yes.
a spirit. And think a lot of like the Paul Vanderklay idea of okay, when we talk about spirit, let's also think about like a very concept we all recognize as team spirit.
Yep. School
Um,
spirit. Yep.
um, and in that sense, largely okay, whatever school we've gotten into or experienced likely existed for some time well before us, and so we're kind of ingratiated into whatever spirit, like team spirit, it had. Um, but largely, those things would have been formed rather intentionally. Um, and oftentimes, especially with like, if you want to look at like NFL head coaches, this is part of what they mean whenever they get into a place and say like, we're gonna redefine the culture here.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly
That's a
what they mean.
that's a shift in trying to shape the
They are going
spirit
to
of the
create
team.
a new spirit. Yes. Yep.
So obviously we're we're here in the north. Uh, um, Dan Campbell, when he got to the Lions,
Hmm.
his big shift was we're gonna boil it down to one word: grit. Was going to be the new focus of the cultural identity, the spirit of the team, and then therefore it's going to reflect as on the spirit of the whole city.
Yes.
And it kind of shows that spirit is something that can kind of take a continuous growth or renewing process. That the more intentionally you push into it, you can shape it.
And also notice how the creation of the spirit flows down from the hierarchy.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Like Sophia's name comes from me and Jessica.
Yes.
Right? Like the spirit of that group comes from like Dan Campbell, right? Like there's a flowing down for the creation of the spirit, right? One other thing that made me think about this particular topic recently was because I haven't actually read the book. The Muppets: A Christmas Carol, because in that they make a point in that, which I'm guessing is probably in the original book, but isn't in the version that me and you always watch, which is the Mickey Mouse
The Mickey Mouse one.
one, which is that the ghost of Christmas Present dies at the end of Christmas, and he makes a point about I've had he says something like I've had 18,000 and something other brothers, and he's referring to all of the other Christmases, right?
Yes.
And so like there's some like I think for me a lot of the idea of like that there can be a spirit of a conversation, like that kind of idea is weird to me because then it opens up the pantheon to be like, oh, there's a near infinite number of beings.
Yes.
But if you also have sort of the idea of like these spirits are ephemeral and can go away in some manner, then I'm like, oh, okay. There's
Well,
something
that's
else
what's really
to that.
that's what's really interesting because I think in a more I'm assuming, right? Because I don't know.
Sure.
I think in a more orthodox take, that would mean like, okay, it would be a conversation, but it might be it's less about the conversation, more about the spirit of the dynamic between me and you.
Yeah, the relationship. Yep.
The relationship, it extends beyond just a single conversation, but even so, could also be boiled down to one conversation. We can have a conversation that's light and jovial. We can have a conversation that's heavy and traumatic. We can have a conversation that's heated and adversarial. And all of those things could potentially be different spirits, or each of those conversations have a different spirit that reflects.
And then even that the spirit is the spirit of the conversation is dictated also to some degree by the medium, right?
Right.
Because like
Well,
we don't normally have conversations about the discussion questions, but we
yes.
could, and
We could.
and like we have to some degree, right? But they're going to be different. Those conversations are going to be different in nature to one of being like, okay, we're going to record this for other people to watch. Like even that, like change in what it is, it changes the spirit of whatever it is that you're doing.
Well, and what I wanted to say is that in the modern age now, we do have an interesting version of that in which we can, because our conversations can now be captured and like immortalized. It's very interesting when the discussion is kind of no longer, even though there is some, depending on how large a community and like feedback from a video could be, and that can be its whole own thing. But there is a kind of ending of that renewal process and being like, okay, it's right here. This is the spirit of it. It's captured in here, and you can go back to it at your leisure.
So now you have
for now at least.
Now you have technology making the Nephilim immortal, right?
Yeah.
like,
right.
Like whoa.
Yeah.
Like okay. Like what's going on here? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something.
Which is, yeah. very
and which
interesting.
and which is a thing of that we don't know if that's actually good or bad. Right, right, because like right
We
that
don't. We
right
really
that's
don't.
like
Yeah.
that's the whole thing of like on one hand it could be really good, and we can think of possible ways that it's really good, but the ways in which it's really bad is already like showed up in the culture, right, of like people digging up things and people going through like your past and everything and seeing what you're saying and all that stuff.
All
So
right. To put a cap on this long dissection that we've done,
yes.
which I think is warranted. We had a lot to talk about on this particular subject.
Oh yeah.
I'll just read the little back and forth we had about this as our actual answers that we had. So my response was Genesis 2:18. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." And then I said, Adam just means man, right? This is the first instance of God referring to man in the present tense. Is this the naming of Adam? Um, I suppose the Hebrew would be enlightening in this case. In context, though, Adam's name is just de facto accepted after this point, as in saying Adam is just referred to as Adam. Like it says the man here, and then afterwards it just says Adam. So that's where I see it as the shifting. Your response was so the first time ESV has it as Adam is right before the curse is stated in Genesis 3:17. I think your options are A, God named him, B, he named himself, or C, the name is attached to him organically, which we now know is kind of your
Yes.
pick. Something like that. If we go with yours, there's an interesting argument that Adam is named in relationship with the creation of women. There's like a mutual naming / creation going on there, which I think might be true even if you go with my answer of Genesis 3:17. But it's a mutual naming / creation in a negative sense, since it's linked to the fall, rather than your answer, which is more positive. So that was the discussion we got on that. And I'll move us on unless you have any final notes.
I think we should probably pause there. Right, you were gonna
You're
go on to
probably
the
right.
next
It's
question.
probably good to stop on that.
Yeah, because well, also because I think Sophia's waking up soon. Um,
Sure.
so we'll do this again.
Yeah, and hopefully people aren't too upset at you know us only getting through 3, but there's a lot to talk on at that. If they just listen, they'll probably be like, "What are they talking about?" for most of the back half. But if they're watching, they get to enjoy looking at Maisie some too, so that's fun.
All she just kept spinning this whole time.
She did.
That's all you do. You're just a little spinner. Say bye.
All right, this is good, Kyle.
All right, later.
Later.